Join the Coven. The Gargoyles were supposed to protect us. But now, I know the truth. A story written by PyroGirl8. Part 3. The final chapter. Sometime later, my heavy eyelids warily fluttered open. I squinted in the darkness, trying to get my bearings. As I slowly sat up, a piercing pain knifed through my tender scalp, and I reached a shaking hand up to my head, feeling a sticky wetness along my hairline. I rubbed and blinked my eyes a few more times, trying to adjust to the murky gloom surrounding me. A blood-coated rock where I had been lying indicated I must have hit my head as I tumbled down the hill, causing me to lose consciousness. I had no idea how long I'd been lying here, unconscious, but if the veil of nightfall promised, it was longer than I had hoped. With a groan, I slowly rose to my feet. My jeans and hoodie were soaked from lying in the wet leaves, and a chill was quickly settling into my bones. My teeth chattered, and I hugged my arms around myself for warmth, begrudgingly trudging back up the hill towards the church. My head swimming, I tried to wade through my muddled thoughts for my next course of action. Should I call the police, see a doctor, flee town? I ruminated on these ideas as I approached the church. Despite the shattered window and the shards of glass covering the lawn, the cathedral appeared deserted. No lights were on, and the parking lot was empty. Leon! I scrubbed a hand over my face as the memory of my best friend's demise resurfaced. I shuddered, bile rising in my throat as I envisioned the tiny monster devouring him. I glanced nervously at the broken window in front of me, finally making up my mind. With a huff, I lifted my aching, bruised body up over the sill, landing unceremoniously in a heap on the floor. My body tense and my heart hammering in my chest, I waited, my ears straining to hear any indication that I may not be alone. When the silence went undisturbed, I let out a soft breath of relief and made my way down the hall to the office where I had last seen Leon in. I steeled myself for the gruesome sight I was sure I would see, even though I was still holding out hope that my friend had survived and was waiting for help. I pushed the door open gently, the well-oiled hinges barely making a sound as it swung open. I stepped inside, not daring to turn the lights on, using only the faint glow of moonlight through the arching windows to guide my search. "Leon, are you there?" I whispered, checking each corner and closet for any sign of my friend. But he was gone. Only a dark stain on the aged hardwood floor indicated Leon's demise had in fact been real. I froze as the faint sound from the hallway drifted to my ears. Beads of sweat dotted my forehead, the salt stinging the tiny scrapes and cuts along my face from the glass and my subsequent fall. My heart thudded in my chest, my breath quickening. I fought for control, fearing whatever presence was approaching would hear the terrified hammering of my heart and close in on me. After hearing no further sounds, I tentatively snuck out into the hall, creeping slowly around the corner. I stifled a shocked gasp as I glanced down the hallway. There, at the end of the hall near the entrance to the nave, stood one lone stone gargoyle. I held my breath, locked in a doomed staring contest with the sinister statue. The silence stretched on, and the monstrosity loomed threateningly before me. My body trembled as I waited for the grotesque gargoyle to make its move. The soft giggle of a child floated down the hallway, bouncing off the walls to reach my ears. Finally, startled from the reticent battle with the gargoyle, I rallied whatever courage I could muster and set forth down the hall once more. I carefully sidestepped around the gargoyle, my eyes glued to the statue the entire time. Even as I backed down through the doorway into the nave, my eyes stayed fixed to it until the statue was no longer in sight. I turned around and stopped dead in my tracks as the icy tendrils of fear snaked their way around my heart, clenching it in its glacial grasp. Surrounding the doorway like a pack of hungry wolves stood a legion of gargoyles, their expressions twisted in sinister snarls and vile visages. A mischievous giggle in my ear caused me to spin around, seeing the gargoyle from the hall had inexplicably moved closer, caging me in the ring of statues. I swore under my breath as I tried to figure out a way out of this predicament. The gargoyles were tightly packed together. I wouldn't be able to escape without picking up and moving them. And heavy as they were, that seemed like an impossibility. Another giggle sounded behind me once more, followed by another, and another. The din rose, echoing off the vaulted ceilings of the cathedral and reverberating back down to me. The playful giggles turned to wicked cackles, and then finally to piercing shrieks. I dropped to my knees in the center of a mass of stone, clamping my hands over my agonized ears as the blood-curdling screams raked through my head. My own screams joined theirs as blood trickled from my ears down to my wrists. The malevolent marble monster sneered down at me as if basking in my torment. When I could finally take it no more, I stumbled back to my feet, with rivulets of blood streaming down the sides of my face, and a roar ripping itself from my chest. I placed my hands against the first gargoyle in front of me, and shoved with all my strength. Instantly, the uncanny screams cut off, and the room went chillingly silent. As if in slow motion, I watched the gargoyle teeter backwards, a grim look of glee twisting its ghastly features as it crashed into the statue behind it. To my horror, the next statue toppled, and then the next, and then the next, the domino effect rippling outwards in a radius of destruction. When the dust finally cleared, I gazed out into a sea of smashed marble gargoyles. The foreboding stillness stretched on, and I didn't bother waiting for the cries I knew were coming. As I cautiously stepped my way through the rubble, careful to maintain my balance, the wailing of countless infants began from beneath the debris. "Oh God," I mumbled, hurrying my pace. The towering double doors lay only a few precious feet away, and I grew careless, opting for speed rather than safety. In the dark, it was that much harder to see where I was stepping. A poorly placed foot almost set me off my balance and tumbling into the source of the cries. My ankle exploded in a burst of pain as I felt a set of needle-like teeth embed themselves in the tender flesh. I screamed, stomping my ankle to dislodge the tiny creature from my skin to no avail. Blood ran down my leg and drenched my sock as the monstrous baby feasted. My panic threatened to overwhelm me, and I struggled to keep my wits about me. I grabbed a hefty chunk of marble and raised it high above my head, sparing not even a moment's hesitation as I brought the stone down upon the beast's skull, over and over. Finally, I felt its jaw slacken and I was free. I tossed aside the makeshift weapon, swiping my blood-covered hands over the front of my sweatshirt as I stumbled out of the wreckage of the gargoyles and into the frigid night air. The wails echoed out into the night behind me as I limped away from the hellhole that was the church. With shaking hands, I pulled out my cell phone, my fingers slicing open on the glass screen that had shattered in my fall from the window. I tried to call Anna 12 times, if not more, but there was no answer. Panic mounting, I limped as fast as I was able down the streets, wincing with each step. As I walked, I glanced up and gasped. All the rooftops that had been guarded by the stone sentinels for as long as the town had stood lie vacant now. It was far more eerie to see them empty than to see the gargoyles looming over the town. And a knot was forming in the pit of my stomach as I stumbled down the road. Finally, reaching my apartment, I fumbled with my keys, but as I went to slide it into the lock, I realized it had been pointless. The door was cracked open, a small sliver of light from inside spilling into the hall. "Anna?" I called tentatively, nudging the door open wider. I closed the door quietly behind me, stepping into the room as my eyes darted around for any sign of her. "Anna, where are you?" I called again as I approached the closed bedroom door. Faint growls reached my ears. "No, no, no, Anna!" I cried as I darted forward, swinging the door open with a bang. A choked sob escaped me as I took in Anna, lying immobile on the floor. Her once vibrant cobalt eyes were now pale and cloudy. A look of terror forever frozen on her beautiful face. I sank to the ground beside her, cradling her limp body in my arms. She was covered in sticky blood, some of it already beginning to dry. Her throat was in shreds, as well as her arm and torso, where the abomination has feasted upon her. I sobbed brokenly, rocking on the floor and murmuring promises to whatever God may deem me worthy of mercy from this torment and spare her life, even though it was already forfeit. A scuffling noise from across the dark room caught my attention, and my head jerked up as my senses went into high alert. I gently set Anna back down and rose to my feet, slowly backing towards the light from the doorway that partially illuminated the bedroom. A small, dark shadow darted from the corner underneath the bed, growls emanating from the pitch darkness where the light couldn't reach. Suddenly, the shadow sped forward, leaping out from under the bed at me. Its small body was propelled inexplicably by stone bat-like wings. A mouth lined with razor-sharp teeth opened as it rushed towards me, and I saw what looked like marble horns spiking out from its forehead. I threw my arm up to shield myself, and the creature latched onto the skin of my forearm, teeth snapping shut around my flesh and clawed fingers digging into arm. I screamed as I stumbled backwards into the living room, flailing my arm around to try and dislodge the monster to no avail. I slammed my arm against the wall, and then again, finally knocking it loose. But not before it ripped a chunk of flesh from my arm. I flung my arm and sent the infant spiraling across the room, splashes of blood spattering across the walls and floor. I stumbled into the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me and locking it. I don't think I have long now. Already my vision grows hazy from the loss of blood my injuries have caused. I tried to staunch the flow of blood with towels, t-shirts, anything. Each one now lay scattered across the floor, soaked in blood. I can hear screams rising from the streets below as the gargoyle infants feast on anything they can get their hands on. I would ask for anyone to send help, but I can already hear the one that dealt me the mortal injuries gnawing through the bedroom door